we haven't said it enough times that we have to have an understanding of the intersectionality of gender, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic factors, educational qualifications, all that makes a community. That is the strength or weakness of a community. And it manifests very strongly when we see the impacts of climate change, the climate extremities that are affecting the communities. Now, this is manifested in a very strong way when it comes to gender consideration. Now, by gender, I'm talking about men, women, but also the transgender, because their position already in society is marginalized. Women and young girls are in a patriarchal setting devalued, and they have multiple restrictions, discriminations that is practiced by the society. When the same society or the community is affected by climate change, so already vulnerable communities have a double jeopardy. When we look at the ethnicity and ethnic compositions, for instance in Bangladesh, we have found small ethnic groups in different parts of the country. Those ethnic communities are already in a vulnerable situation when it comes to the socio-economic position or their opportunities or their education and qualification. And this sharpens when there is repeated disasters. It is obvious to those of us who work at the communities that in an existing discriminated economic situation, they have less information, coping ability, and resources to take the challenges placed by climate change. So therefore, we have to make an extra effort to support those who are marginalized because of their ethnicity, because of their gender, and because of even age. Because we have seen how young people are not part and parcel of decision making. Their voices are not heard. They are not engaged to find solutions. So these steps have to be taken. For instance, when we work on the humanitarian response, in our Chittagong Hill Tracts, one of the communities that we were working with had lost their crop. There was food insecurity. And we tried to support them through food packages. But because of the cultural practices, they could not consume that food. They were only allowed to eat certain things for 1 month, which was their cultural practice. We were not aware of that. And had we been aware, we would have made our package, food package, relief package, adaptable and, fit to purpose. So we also have to realize this is an example of how there's diversity in our communities. The strong example of that is how we now talk about the dignity kit. It's very recent that hygiene kit, dignity kit is provided to women and girls. It wasn't very, even if we look back 10 years ago, this was missing in our relief package, in our support package. But this is a reality for women and girls every month. And I'm pleased to see that this is being provided. But is there enough investment? Can the communities afford this? Can they buy this when they have lost their home, they have lost their livelihood, they've lost their income? This gets deprioritized. So with all the best intention of a family or a community, this gets deprioritized because you're looking for water, you're trying to find food, you're trying to then provide healthcare to the elderly or the sick in the home. Then you're looking for school, education. So we must consider the whole picture. and take a holistic approach when we are talking about supporting. But is it only about reaction and responding once a disaster occurs? No. It's about the preparedness. It's about trying to evade this climate crisis. It is about moving out of fossil dependency, looking for alternative energy, which will not cause the global warming at the level that we have seen. So those have to be prioritized. And all this has to be prioritized on the basis of historical injustices. When you are in Bangladesh, where the emission is less than 1%, and yet we're talking about shifting out of fossil fuel, shifting out the coal, we then have to have a plan with the budget and investment to transit to green, to make that green transition. And that alone is not going to be possible for the government. This has to be in partnership with the private sector. This has to be in partnership with the global actors, because they have caused the global emission for decades by practicing the traditional energy paradigm. So we need that shift, and we need that investment. And we have to correct the historical injustices. So the historical injustices exist for the community. We know about the historical injustices as a result of patriarchy. So we're talking about change in mindset, change in behavior, change in legislation, change in institutional approach to work with communities, to work with women, girls, young people, transgender. In Bangladesh, the efforts are ongoing. The civil society, NGOs, INGOs, we are all doing the advocacy lobbying required. Our development partners are coming. But we see a major gap between what we wish to do, what we plan to do, and what budget and resources we have. And if we don't get those resources and technology and the know-how and sharing and learning experiences, how do we foresee those changes, those transitions happening? So at the COP28 discussions, it is critical to have candid discussions and not spend so much time on removing brackets and dotting the I's and the T, cutting the T's. It's now time to talk about actual, real, meaningful action. And that meaningful action will be meaningful if it is backed with finances, if there is investment. So we need to see the investment from the Annex 1 countries, from the rich and developed countries, to the adaptation pot, to the mitigation pot. But now we have reached a stage where we really need to talk and invest in the loss and damage fund. There's been lack of representation of women, young people, indigenous groups, persons with special need or disability in any mechanism that has been put together so far. And this is why, if this loss and damage fund mechanism is set outside the World Bank, there is hope of voice and participation. Because I'm sure you can all agree with me that in a setup like the World Bank, there's more international bureaucracy than there is community. And communities, I'm sure, are capable of managing their finances, of being accountable, of being transparent. And we're not talking about a mechanism that is based on loans, but it's a grant-making mechanism.